Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Israel Brief. If you are joining us for the first time, I'm Rolene Marks. This is the Israel Brief, and really, we are a community, we are a family, and we are brought to you every Monday to Thursday by Lay of the Land. And you join me every Monday to Thursday for your top stories from Israel. Now, you can't see what my shirt says, but it does call for the immediate release of the hostages. It says in Hebrew, bring them home now. And bring them home indeed. It has been 180 days. Today marks day 180 since that Black Saturday of the 7th of October, where over 1,200 Israelis were murdered by Hamas terrorists who infiltrated into Israeli sovereign territory and kidnapped over 253 hostages. To date, 134 are still remaining in custody, held captive by Hamas. Over 30 of them have been murdered either on the 7th of October or in captivity, and we want them home now. As the shirt says, bring them home now. Let's take a look at those top stories making headlines, and we begin with the story we spoke about yesterday, and it is the horrific events that led to the killing of 7 World Food Kitchen aid workers. Now, I want to preface this by saying, there is no excuse. The army does not do this deliberately. We do not target civilians. But I do think that there is a disproportionate amount of scrutiny on what the Israeli army does than any other army operating in horrific conditions. So let's take a look at the top stories. And yesterday, the army said that they would conduct an investigation into what exactly happened. And last night, Herzi Halevi, the IDF Chief of Staff, General Halevi, in a statement out said that he is very, very sorry. He apologizes, from the bottom of the heart of the IDF. He said the strike was not carried out with intention. He said it was a misidentification mistake that happened at night. The aid convoy was transporting aid under cover of darkness, and it was misidentification of identity. He said in very, very complex conditions. Now, we know that Israel, and again, I'm not making excuses, I just want to explain the type of scenario our army is fighting in. We are not fighting army to army on a battlefield. We are fighting very, very intense urban warfare where our enemy, an internationally recognized terrorist organization, often disguises itself in civilian clothing. Now, again, the army is not making an excuse, but as is a democratic sovereign army, they are being transparent and they are owning up to their mistake. The chief spokesperson of the IDF, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, said that we are committed to examining our operations and will share all our findings in the most transparent way. I think this is all we can ask for. Again, war is horrific, war is ugly, civilians get killed, mistakes are made, but here we have an army owning up to their mistake. President Herzog spoke to Chef Jose Andres. He is the head of World Food Kitchen. He has actually penned a very, very moving op-ed in today's English edition of Ynet. You can find it. It is on the ynet.com English site. It's impossible to read it without feeling compassion for both sides. The president expressed his deepest sorrow and condolences and said, we are absolutely committed to an investigation. Yesterday, Prime Minister Netanyahu, shortly after he was released from hospital for hernia surgery, said that it is a horrible, horrible mistake. He said, we are heartbroken, it is tragic, and we are committed to an investigation. The same sentiments were expressed by our Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant, who said that Israel will make sure that we investigate it and that we will be transparent with all of our findings. President Biden lambasted Israel, saying Israel's not doing enough to protect aid workers and saying he was outraged and heartbroken. The 7 aid workers came from the United States, Australia, the United Kingdom, Poland, and at least one Palestinian. The Polish president said that this is really, really testing our solidarity and called for an investigation, as did the Australian government. And Prime Minister Sunak of the United Kingdom called for an investigation, while Foreign Minister David Cameron summoned Israel's ambassador, probably for a reprimand. Again, I want to stress this was not done intentionally, and Israel does do everything we can to ensure aid goes in. According to the Geneva Conventions, Israel is bound to not impede or hinder aid in any way, but supplying aid is not a requirement of war. But Israel is making sure, as we have said, we will flood Gaza with aid, medical aid and food aid. There have been mass protests in Jerusalem from Sunday and will carry on throughout the week until today. Last night there were clashes between protesters and police, and the head of the Shin Bet said that while it's everybody's right to protest freely, there is a line where protests become violent. So what are people protesting? People are protesting, demanding the immediate release of the hostages. Many Israelis feel that the absolute focus of this war should be the release of the hostages. Defeating Hamas can come at a later stage, but people want the hostages home immediately. Some of the protesters broke through the barrier and managed to get close to the Prime Minister's residence, and many are also calling for elections, saying that the Prime Minister, first of all, has not accepted responsibility for the events of the 7th of October. The buck stops with him. He is the highest in the level of command, and that they query the way that this war is being handled. Meanwhile, the Israeli delegation that was negotiating for the release of hostages has returned home from Cairo. Israel has put forward another proposal for Hamas. One of the sticking points is Hamas want residents of Gaza from the north to be able to return to their homes, and the War Cabinet Minister Eisenkot, as well as other Israeli officials, have appealed to the Prime Minister to have flexibility here and start to allow them to come home to their homes in the north of the Gaza Strip. Israel has gone to Cairo to negotiate because we are getting very, very frustrated with the Qataris. We are not making any progress on that front. And speaking of Qatar, let's talk about Al Jazeera. 2 days ago, the Knesset passed what we call the Al Jazeera law, which will see the Israeli, or give the Israeli government the authority to shut down foreign networks and seize their equipment. Now, I'm a journalist by profession. I'm not a big believer in shutting down the freedom of speech or shutting down journalists from being able to do their jobs. I think you start heading into dangerous territory when you start to inhibit journalists from doing their job. However, the issue here with Al Jazeera is that their content is vehemently anti-Israel, extremely pro-Hamas, is often replete with very dangerous lies, like last week's accusation that IDF troops were raping women in Shifa Hospital. They were forced to withdraw that after even Hamas said, no, that actually isn't true. What you don't hear is the other side of that argument, when they've said, why isn't Israel raping women in Shifa Hospital? Rape has been used as a weapon to control, to conquer, and that is just not part of the Israeli psyche to behave like murderous, rapist barbarians. So this law will see it being highly likely that Al Jazeera's operations in Israel will be temporarily shut down. And finally, two countries who have expressed their ongoing solidarity with the Palestinians have made comments about accepting or recognizing a Palestinian state. The Spanish Prime Minister said yesterday that his government will recognize a Palestinian state as soon as July. And today, the Belgian Foreign Ministry said that they will recognize a Palestinian state when the moment comes. Now, they don't tell you what that moment is, but this is a movement to recognize a Palestinian state. However, there's one big spoke in the wheel. You can't enforce a state on Israelis or Palestinians. These details have to be negotiated between us, the Israelis and the Palestinians, and is bound to make both sides highly unhappy. Meanwhile, the Palestinian Authority's Fatah party have appealed to the Iranians to stop interfering in domestic politics. The Iranians have long had a stranglehold on Palestinian factions. They are the chief sponsor of Hezbollah in the north and Hamas in the south. And for there to be any kind of movement forward, we need to seriously release their stranglehold. What is interesting is that the Americans have demanded a reformed Palestinian Authority. Could this be a step in the direction? Only time will tell. So thank you guys for joining me for today's top stories. Please don't forget to visit our website at www.layoftheland.online. Our Facebook page is at LOTL site, SITE at Lotl site. We are on YouTube right here at The Israel Brief. Please like, share, subscribe, and invite all your friends to join our community too. And we are on X at Lay of the Land 5. God bless you all. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. I will see you again tomorrow. Bye for now.